Hey guys, thanks for joining me on another episode of Jack's Mechanics. Today we've got a check engine light on a Mercedes SLK 2005 model. Just bringing up the European onboard diagnostics part of the scanner. I'll get you down there. So we've got nearly 70,000 Ks, check engine light, active right now. It's a 2005 model. Not sure what engine it is currently. This is a regular customer of ours. Hasn't been serviced for a year. Not that that's usually a issue. It's not really done many Ks, only a couple of thousand Ks. So we've got a lean code. Car feels like it's running right, which is typical with lean codes usually, or depending on how much fuel trimming the car is allowed. Sorry about that glare on the screen. I'll try and take you over, get you out of there a little bit. So it's too lean at idle, so indicating a vacuum leak. Lots of short-term trim. I think this must be just a 4-cylinder engine. Oh, so it's 20 kilometers, not much load, maybe throttle closed. Yep, the map's pretty low, probably typical for throttle closed with the aircon on. Engine is warm. Yeah, there's pretty much no throttle, so probably cruising up to a set of lights or a roundabout or something, and we have a lean condition. So obviously our first step, we're going to make sure we're still faulting by checking our fuel trims, making sure we're in closed loop. So we've got closed loop fault, might have to clear the engine light. Yeah, so there's no short-term trim at the moment, so we'll clear the data, try and get this running. I know usually you should key it off, but sometimes it also works with the engine just running, which there's the proof. So we'll go back into our trouble data. Might have to key it off and on to get it to come out of its closed loop fault though. Open loop fault. Alright, key it off and back on. You have to exit out sometimes as well. Just key it off and back on again. Just realised that fan's probably quite noisy for you guys. I'll turn that down. Cool, so we're in open loop. Possibly not warm enough yet. So we'll go into our closed loop, loop status. So we can lock that, and then we can go back down to our fuel trims, even though we know when our short terms start reacting. That's how we know we're in closed loop, but you'll be able to see it together. Just bring the RPM up a little bit. Just hitting throttle. Closed loop. Short terms instantly lean, bring the RPM up 2500. Hopefully it's not going closed loop fault. Would like to see that do something. You would have thought it would have by now. I mean, that upstream sensor is not doing anything. The wideband there is just stuck very lean. Pretty much as lean as it can go. We had some got the RPM up again at 3000. Don't like the fact that oxygen sensor is doing nothing at the upstream, just trying to flood the exhaust. Alright. Guess we'll go into Mercedes. I'll just pause the video and load up the Mercedes part of it. So we're just back we're into Mercedes. So up the top 1.4 litre, this is 271. Just scanned it for codes, mixture format self-adaption. So that's relating to fuel trims, there's an issue there. And the upstream, a oxygen sensor also flagging an issue. To see what we have in our data. So no lambda control. Maybe we'll clear these codes. Just have a look what else we got. Alright, we'll key it off. Seeing as it's having dramas and doesn't really want to play the easy game. Scan for codes again. No codes. Data. Still no control. Voltage has changed on the sensor though. Interesting. Engine smooth running. We'll see if there's anything in here. Let's check the downstream, see what's happening there. Yeah, that looks normal, about 0.5 volt you generally want to see, on a narrow band that is. The upstream wide bands can have pretty much any voltage range. Yeah, see, that's going really lean. Higher voltage on a wide band is lean, so the fact that our in the OBD side of it only showing as like max of 1.9 volts, that would just be the scanner only allowing it to go that high, when obviously here we have in our manufacturer specific, we've got 3 volts. Looks like it's got some control going on now. You know, when I'm assuming that it's lean at around 3 volts, but yeah, you're not really sure unless you work on the same model every time what that actual voltage might be. Like Toyotas, I think they use 2.4 as a baseline, and others they could use like 1.8, or they're just all random, so you just sort of need to learn those side of things. Just gonna go back into OBD again, a little bit of back and forth here. Now it actually says we've got control. Turn the key off, key back on. Would just be nice to know if we're looking for a vacuum leak or a sensor issue at this point, but I'm committed to getting these fuel trims to show me something. It's probably going to be the last time that I try. If it doesn't want to play the game, we'll just go have a look in the engine bay, maybe get the smoke tester out, just check for vacuum leak via smoke. Scan tool can be very slow sometimes. Open loop. It's not an open loop fault, but this would be really nice to see some control happening. Okay, close loop. Just maxed out again instantly. Alright, we're gonna jump in the engine bay. Give me a sec. So I was just thinking, we've got an actual oxygen sensor upstream down here, but the connector and wiring goes underneath the car and ends up underneath there. Could have a look at the PCM, might be easy. Though I was also thinking the narrow band downstream sensor is showing us 0.5 volt. It's not showing us a lean condition, and we've got no control of the fuel trim. It's just maxed out, and I believe, well, you would think maybe if it was adding that much fuel, then maybe it would be showing rich. Okay, scrap that idea. Well, what I was going to say is I think that if the narrow band the wideband up the top is reporting a false lean, and adding all this fuel, then you would expect the downstream to be showing really rich, but it's not showing that. It's just showing normal, half a volt. So maybe we can believe the upstream. I'm just going to go back into the data of the oxygen sensor, and over here where I've disconnected that line, I'm going to put some propane in and see how the scan tool, the oxygen sensor, reacts, if it is doing anything. So I'm going to need two hands to do this, so I'll show you here. I just started controlling it just then. So we've got 3.1, it's starting to sort of flatline. I'll add the fuel in and we'll see if that drops down. Yeah, so something odd going on here. Tried to introduce the fuel in, no change. Tried to introduce the fuel in here, no change. Went back into the OBD and just got it running here. I'm trying to get you out of that glare, but essentially it's really bad. Try and get you back on this. Yeah. Focused up. Focus, you silly thing. One sec, guys. Oh, that's why I accidentally zoomed out. So you can see at this point, around 300 frames, the sensor was actually working fine, and then all of a sudden it shot up to 3 volts, and the actual EQ ratio went super lean as well. While we can see here on our downstream, nothing actually happened. There was no change. So if this was telling the truth, we would see this drop really lean, but there's no reason for it to happen. There was no engine tone. Everything sounds like it's running okay. I'm pretty sure this is not reading correctly. So I think our next step is going to be to go underneath the car and just carry out a pin drag check, and I think that will be what we do. We end up putting an oxygen sensor in this thing. Nothing is making it change. You would think now if I put a fuel source to it, it would bring those numbers down a bit, but nothing changes at all. It's just sort of stuck lean. So I think that's where we're at. I think I'm going to order a sensor and put a sensor in it and hope that we've made the right call, I guess. I feel reasonably confident. Yeah, no guarantees though. Let's see what happens. So we're back. This is about 2 weeks later. I had a few days off. We had Easter, and when I got back, we had a narrowband sensor arrive for the rear, so they sent us the wrong one. And then a few days later, this turned up, but the customer took the car away in the meantime, so now he's just brought it back a few days after that. So that's pretty much where we're at. I've been thinking about this car, and as for our fuel test, where we introduced the fuel into the intake, we were looking for a reaction on the O2 sensors. I've carried out that test once or twice before with those bottles, and I don't think those bottles are that accurate. I think we need a hose on there and put it more directly into the intake. So sort of want to disregard that test on this car, though it is a good test. If you introduce a fuel source, you want to see your O2s react rich if they're working correctly, and then the same if you introduce a vacuum leak, you want to see them react to a lean condition. So the reason that I believe that we're not seeing any excess fuel out of the tailpipe and on the rear O2 sensor is because it's showing a closed loop fault. Even though it's showing that our fuel trims are plus 25 on the short term, that it detects that that's not accurate, and it's just ignoring that. So that's why I think maybe it's just using some other sort of calculation for fuel trim, and or maybe there's essentially no fuel trim going on. It's just turned that part of it off altogether. Wide bands are quite closely monitored. From what I'm aware of, if you essentially have an wideband O2 code, you're probably going to want to be changing the sensor. So that's where we're at. We're going to put this one in, and I'm pretty confident with it, but I just sort of wanted to overrun that. I can't really remember where I was at with the previous part of what I was saying. Like I say, it's been a couple of weeks, but yeah, that's where we're at. Pretty sure the closed loop fault is turning off the fuel trim altogether. That's why we're not seeing 900 millivolts on the rear sensor. The computer's just doing its own thing, some sort of base fuel what's the word fuel map, and it's just sort of running, essentially driving the car and not being as good as what it can be. And it might be doing those inputs just from throttle position and stuff like that, and no fuel trim. So we'll get this one in, and we'll get the scanner up and go for a road test. Hopefully that'll make sense to you guys. Hopefully this video comes together okay. A bit hard sometimes when we have weeks worth of breaks in a diagnosis and then the repair, but that's cars for you. I'm sure you guys are all well aware. Well, that's not good. Hang on. Oh no. That's coming from the harness side. Alright. Well, I think I remember something about this in the past with the cam sensors or something. I'm going to bring it back down and check out the cam sensor wiring. Might make a phone call to my friend in Sydney. I know there's a guy that deals with this sort of stuff regularly. Bear with me on this one. Yeah, pretty sure I don't know if they're the cam sensors or the variable valve. I mean, they don't look like cam sensors. We've got cam sensors up the back. I'm not too well known on this engine. They sort of look like variable valve timing actuators. Let's disconnect these. I need to get some pliers on this part. I remember a bulletin one time. It's all coming back to me. I'm pretty sure these fail, and there's oil goes through here and through the harness. This has all happened because the other day I was not really getting anywhere. It came to lunchtime. I decided to make the call on the oxygen sensor without doing my due diligence and carrying out pindrag tests. So I was going to do that. If I'd have carried out my pindrag check, I would have found that, and we wouldn't have ordered the oxygen sensor. That's very, very, very frustrating. Let me get these connectors off and have a look in there. And then we've got some oily residue. Can't really see too much. This one's a bit worse, and it's starting to drip on the belt. Try and get that to focus. Sorry about that, dropped my phone. Either way, we can clearly see oil coming out of there, and I'm sure it makes its way up through the harness and yeah, down into the oxygen sensor plug. It's probably going to be in the ECU as well, I'd maybe say. Let me make a phone call to my friend. I'm pretty sure he's run into this before, and we can get the full story on it. So just took the plug off the DME. As you can see, we've got oil in the harness there as well. You can see on the pins different coloration. Got the shakes. You can see oil on them. So essentially what's happening, the phasers are leaking, goes down the harness. Natural vibrations of the engine is essentially pumping the oil through the harness. It can go into the coils, it can go into the coolant temp sensor, it can go into the DME. It makes its way down to the oxygen sensors because they're the lowest point of the harness. So now the fix is going to be replace the phasers. There's a short harness that we put in between the phasers and the main harness, and it's a non-oxygenated harness, so essentially it's a solid harness. So when they leak, they will leak externally rather than in through the harness. So we're going to be getting both the phasers. It's going to be getting an oxygen sensor. We're also going to disconnect this harness and try and bleed some brake fluid and degreaser or something something that doesn't damage the plastic, and essentially lift it up and try and work it through the harness on both of them. Try and get it out of the DME connector. I don't think we'll pull the DME off, and we'll just turn it upside down and try and drain some of that out. So stay tuned, that's where we're at. So we've got a wiring harness part numbers here for you guys. It's a HSY part number, OE part number. This is what it looks like, just a small harness. Plug this into the wiring harness, plug this into the cam adjuster. Just like we've got this one, just a little extension. And I'll just cable tie that up out of the way, and I'll do the same with this one. Righto guys, we've got a closed loop. Obviously we're up to nearly 1500 frames. It's been running for about 5-10 minutes. Just done a few Ks in it. The closed loop status, obviously stuck in closed loop, and not going into that closed loop fault. Short term trim looking good. Again, this video is weeks apart. I'm pretty sure this was stuck at either positive 25 or negative 25, but it was maxing out, and now you can see that we've got good trim happening. If I put it into neutral, just bring the RPM up a bit, we can confirm that the short-term fuel trims are working. Bank 2 oxygen sensor, I just revved it and it just cut lean, working perfectly. Sorry, bank 1 sensor 2 is what I meant to say. That's it. I think we can call that one a fix for this one. Just giving us a bit of a run around. Well, giving me a run around, giving you guys a run around from behind the screen, so hopefully it's a bit less stressful for you. Actually, it wasn't that stressful, this one, but just interesting. If we'd have checked that pin fitment issue, you know, from the start, we would have found that didn't need an oxygen sensor, did not I don't know, maybe, you know, some current was getting transferred from one wire to another through that oil, and that was given as the fault. Really hard to say. Yeah, can't say unless we cleaned it and, you know, put it in, didn't put the sensor in and drove it and see what happened. But it's got the new phasers, you guys seen that. It's got the new wiring harnesses. We've sprayed degreaser in the harness, tried to clean it out as much as possible. I also sprayed compressed air in there, and yeah, some of it made its way out of the harness, so I think we will probably get this one back. And it's a regular customer, so we'll probably just disconnect the sensor every time and just try and clean out some more oil if that's the case. But yeah, I think that's all from me. Hope that you learned something. Hope you took something away from it. If you did, consider liking it. Consider subscribing it to the consider subscribing to the channel. And I was going to say, consider sharing the channel around if you feel like doing so. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.